The recent arrival of Russia's Pantsir-S1 and Buk-M2E air defense systems in Venezuela marks the most significant upgrade to Caracas's military posture in nearly a decade. While Venezuela's armed forces have long possessed a diverse mix of Soviet-era and Russian-made platforms, many of these systems suffered low readiness, limited maintenance, and severe logistical challenges caused by economic collapse and sanctions. The confirmed delivery of new air defense assets represents not only a material reinforcement, but also a shift in Venezuela's strategic mindset, from a primarily internal security force to a defensive power preparing for external pressures in the Caribbean theater. For several years, Venezuela's air defense architecture has been a patchwork of aging Soviet platforms and a handful of modern systems acquired before the country's economic crisis. The S-300VM Ante-2500 has served as the symbolic backbone of its long-range air defense, but operational readiness has been uncertain, and the number of active launchers may be smaller than publicly stated. Venezuela also maintains older Buk batteries, OSA AK short-range systems, Pechora 2M upgrades, and Igla-S man-portable missiles. Yet many of these systems suffer from maintenance problems, lack of spare parts, and limited radar coverage. The network is fragile, with substantial blind spots and inconsistent integration. The country's ability to counter modern threats, such as low-flying cruise missiles, precision-guided munitions, and long-range unmanned aerial vehicles, has eroded. In this context, the return of Pantsir-S1 and Buk-M2E represents an attempt to rebuild the layered structure of Venezuelan air defense from the bottom up. The Pantsir-S1, which combines 30mm cannons and surface-to-air missiles with a quick-reaction radar, is designed to counter aircraft, helicopters, rockets, and unmanned aerial systems flying at low altitude. It is a direct response to the growing global use of unmanned platforms, a domain in which Venezuela is acutely vulnerable. The Buk-M2E, with a 45-kilometer engagement envelope, provides a medium-range shield that bridges the gap between Pantsir and the long-range S-300VM. Together, they form a multi-layered defensive concept that Venezuela has not possessed in reliable form for years. However, the timing of these deliveries is more important than the hardware itself. The acquisitions come at a moment of rising tensions with the United States, which has increased air and naval activity in the Caribbean. Maritime patrol flights and intelligence-gathering missions near Venezuelan airspace have intensified. Meanwhile, the deployment of a United States carrier strike group close to the Venezuelan coast has shifted Caracas's threat perception from internal unrest to external intervention. The government of Nicolas Maduro believes that its strategic environment has entered a phase where a calibrated form of deterrence is necessary. Another factor shaping Venezuela's posture is the ongoing territorial dispute with Guyana over the Essequibo region. Caracas has escalated claims and military exercises near the border, while Guyana has moved closer to the United States, the United Kingdom, and the Netherlands for security support. With new offshore oil discoveries transforming Guyana into a rising energy player, Venezuela perceives a growing alignment between Western interests and its neighbor. In this environment, Caracas fears limited precision strikes or punitive actions aimed at disabling command centers, radar installations, or energy infrastructure. Strengthening air defense is therefore viewed as an essential countermeasure against any small-scale, high-precision operation. The third pillar of this shift lies in Venezuela's deepening alignment with Russia, Iran, and China. For Russia, Venezuela provides a geopolitical foothold in the Western Hemisphere at a moment when Moscow seeks to create asymmetric pressure points in response to global tensions. Iran views Venezuela as a partner for unmanned aerial systems, radar technologies, and electronic warfare cooperation, areas in which Tehran has developed significant expertise despite sanctions. China, while more cautious, continues to support Venezuela through surveillance radars, electronic systems, and long-term energy partnerships. Together, these three states form a strategic triangle that sees Venezuela not merely as a customer, but as an opportunity to contest United States influence in the Caribbean basin. The long-term ambition hinted at by these developments is the construction of a limited anti-access and area denial bubble around key Venezuelan regions. While Venezuela cannot replicate the highly sophisticated systems deployed by Russia or China, it can aim to create a smaller version centered on Caracas, Maracay, and the country's critical oil infrastructure. In such a model, the S-300VM would serve as the backbone of long-range coverage, the Buk-M2E would form the medium-range layer, and the Pantsir-S1 would secure high-value assets against low-altitude threats. Supplementary radar systems from China or Iran would provide improved sensing, while electronic warfare packages would attempt to complicate enemy targeting and disrupt navigation signals. Caracas is also concentrating heavily on counter-unmanned aerial operations. The global proliferation of long-range unmanned aerial vehicles and precision loitering munitions has made air defense density a critical requirement, even for states with weak air forces. Venezuela understands that a potential confrontation with the United States, Guyana, or even non-state actors would almost certainly involve unmanned platforms. The Pantsir-S1 is one of the few assets available to Venezuela that can respond rapidly and repeatedly to this type of threat. Yet despite the symbolism of these deliveries, Venezuela faces serious structural challenges. The country's economy is unable to sustain high-tempo operations or intensive maintenance cycles. Even if the systems themselves are modern, the supporting logistics, spare parts supply, and radar maintenance infrastructure remain fragile. Many of Venezuela's previous Russian systems degraded because the country lacked both financial resources and technical training. The armed forces have experience operating advanced Soviet and Russian platforms, but their current readiness is uncertain. The ability of Venezuela to integrate these new systems into a coherent national air defense network will depend on the extent of Russian technical support, which itself is constrained by Moscow's global commitments. Regionally, these developments will be watched most closely by Brazil, Guyana, and the United States. Brazil, with its growing fleet of Gripen E fighters and a strong industrial base, retains overwhelming air superiority and does not view Venezuela as a symmetrical competitor. However, a more capable Venezuelan air defense network near the border could complicate Brazilian surveillance and crisis management efforts if tensions escalate in Amazon regions. Guyana, now backed by external partners, sees Venezuela's buildup as a direct signal in the Essequibo dispute. The United States will adjust its operational planning in the Caribbean, but will not regard Venezuela's new systems as a strategic deterrent. They may, however, increase the cost and complexity of any potential precision strike. In the end, the return of Pantsir and Buk to Venezuela reflects a broader transformation of the country's military strategy. While Caracas remains far from establishing a full anti-access and area denial zone, it is moving toward a hybrid defensive model inspired by Syria, Iran, and Russian doctrine. The acquisitions are less about matching Western firepower and more about raising the threshold for intervention, creating uncertainty for adversaries, and strengthening the political narrative at home. What Venezuela will seek next, radars, unmanned platforms, electronic warfare systems, or even advanced missiles, will determine whether this is merely a symbolic gesture or the beginning of a new security architecture in northern South America.